Hi, glad you could join us today for Small Things Greatly. Today we're working with chocolate again just because it's fun to do and it's my specialty. So we're going to do something a little different that we haven't done before, which is the molded chocolate. And this is going to be something that is easy to do, but people are going to be amazed at the results because when I bring these to parties, apparently people think that I have sat there and chiseled them out and carved them, and I haven't. I've just used these really simple molds. They're usually plastic and cost a couple of dollars each, sometimes a little bit more. You can get them in all different types. You can get them for holidays, flowers, you can get them, it's just endless. Today we're going to be doing some that have seashells, which people really like. And I want you to keep your eyes open for things that could be molds that might not necessarily be. Like I said, these can be bought at local craft stores, at local chocolate suppliers, and just like a few dollars, like I said. But another thing you can do, I've once got chocolate someplace, and it was at a bargain place, so it was only $1 for the chocolate, and these were actually filled with chocolate. And then when I ate the chocolate, and I did share some, but when I ate the chocolate, I realized I can use that mold again. And this is one of my favorites, and I've been using it for years and years and years, and it's still good. So that was pretty simple and cost less than the other molds. So you might find things, even when you're taking off, unwrapping things, you might find plastic and say, oh, that would be cool. There's a nice circle there. So we're going to use this today. I'm going to put some chocolate in the microwave and just roughly, let me get this in there and then I'll explain a little bit about what we're doing with it. So that chocolate comes in wafers like this. You can buy it by the pound. You can buy it at the places that I mentioned before. Different flavors. It comes in usually dark milk, white, but now they're having some other ones like salted caramel here, which is great. And these come in a little less than a pound, but it usually averages out to about $3 a pound for these. You'll also get it in different colors if you like. If you wanted to do some orange pumpkins, some dark turkeys, you could do almost anything. So that's what we're going to be working with. And I just put them in a plastic container, and I just reuse these. You can use a glass or plastic. I just find the plastic works better. And I don't get hot spots. And hot spots would be if you were melting something and just for some reason the heat was in one spot, it might burn. So you don't want that. And so we're going to do that. Chocolate is in the microwave for 2 minutes. I usually start at a minute or 2 minutes, but I know my microwave. So once you get started, if you wanted to try it out at a minute, might be okay. And then you can always add 30 seconds to it, but you can't take away after you've burned it. So just start slow with probably a minute at full power, and then stir it, and I will show you what that's going to look like. So for the most part, it's a pretty fast process. These are going to go into the fridge or the freezer and probably only have to stay in for maybe 5 minutes, not more, depending on how thick they are. Because if you've got something like this that isn't really very thick, it goes really fast. So sometimes I'll put one in, fill another one, and by the time I do, if it's been in the freezer, that first one can come out. And they release pretty easily, and hopefully they will not make me a liar and it will release while I'm on camera and it will be fine. So we shall see. So that's in there now, and we're going to try a few different kinds of chocolate. We're going to do a milk, and then we're going to do the salted caramel, and maybe use that salted caramel in the maple leaves, because that'll look nice and it'll look like it should be for a fall type thing. Now this started to melt, but it's going to need a little bit more. So I'm going to just stir it as much as I can and get it away from the edges, because microwaves usually melt in a certain way, and we want to make sure that it can all get melted without having any hot spots. So we'll put this in again for like another 30 seconds. And we're going to use this parchment paper, and that's going to be for when we take the chocolates out, and we're just going to flip it onto here, and it just kind of differentiates it from your other surface, where I like to cover this up, and that way you don't have to clean up too much later. So I just put a plastic tablecloth, but I also keep this so that sometimes when you're starting and you're doing a lot of stuff, sometimes I do work where I have almost 900 pieces of chocolate that I'm working with. So this area gets covered really fast. And if I have it on the parchment paper, I can find it easier. And sometimes there's just little bits around the outside that will be on the chocolate mold. So that way I can clean that off, make sure everything's fine. So we're gonna wait for that and stir it up and see how that goes. In the meantime, I'm gonna take that out and maybe add some of the caramel and get that cooking. So now you can see it's pretty much all melted. Nice and smooth. So while we're working on this one, I'm gonna put the caramel in, 2 minutes. So with this part, sometimes people use a small container, and it's like a squirt bottle. I just find like that's one more thing to clean, so that's not what I do. But we've got our chocolate here, and you can see it's nice and melted. And I'm just gonna pour it in here. And this one has 20 little cavities on it to go into, for the chocolate. And I mark the moles just so that I know if I'm doing a lot of them, I'll know how many I have each time. And I keep a little paper with hash marks so I know how many. If you're just doing it for a party or for yourself, then it's no big deal. So it's just a question of putting in a little chocolate like that. And you want to do it so it's just below the line. It's better to underfill it than overfill it. And so on these, I'm just going to do probably not the whole batch, but just some so that you'll be able to see. This is a seashell mold, and sometimes when I do this one, I'll put it onto a plate. In the finished product, I'll put some brown sugar, and then I'll put these onto there, and it looks really nice, especially if these are in like a white, a dark, and a milk. And what I'm doing now, and I'll let you see if I move all my stuff, I'm just tapping it on a hard surface. And that's going to get out the air bubbles. If the air bubbles are there, it's no big deal. It's still going to taste good, but you've got these nice molds that have all little indentations in them so that it's going to make it look like a seahorse or a shell. And if you don't get out the air bubbles, then you have a little spot there, so it's less a little space, and it just doesn't look as good. So it's still edible, but we're going to try and get out most of this, and you'll see the little bubbles come to the surface. And so that's what it looks like. Sometimes I'll look underneath and just check and see if I see any spots or bubbles, but for the most part, these seem fine, and we're going to put them in the freezer for a few minutes. I've also got a mold here that just has 6 openings on it. They call them cavities. And that's another thing about this. I don't like that they're called molds, because I don't think you should be using the word mold with food, but that's just me. So when I say that I'm doing chocolate molds, it just doesn't sound good. But that's the word we have to work with now. So I'm going to fill this chocolate mold, and this one's going to have some turkeys on it that actually can stand up. And you'll find there are just thousands and thousands of molds. I get mine locally at Chocolate Works in New Bedford, because she has a great variety, and she's a small business that I like to support because she's very, very good at getting me what I need. But a place like that has thousands of molds. Literally, she can't even put them all out, and she'll just change them out for the season. So if you go in there and you want something for Thanksgiving, there'll be 30 different molds, but there'll also be soccer molds and sports things and nautical molds and all different types of things. There'll be anniversaries, birthdays, all different types. So there's pretty much anything you could want. There are molds for it, whether you find it online or locally. This one's going to go in the freezer too. It's already all set. And we're just going to wait for that caramel to finish melting. And when that comes out, we're going to do the maple leaves, as I said, just because it looks kind of nice, and it'll be a fall type thing we can use. And the countdown is on. So on this one, you'll be able to see that the wafers still look like wafers, but they're shiny. It's almost like when we put them in there, but they're shinier, and they're able to just get stirred and melted. Now this brand I don't enjoy or like as much as the Merkins chocolate, which is what I used for the milk chocolate. But this is a salted caramel one, like I said, that already comes with the color and the flavor in it. And I've just found it's usually pretty good to use. It just doesn't melt quite as good. So for this one, that's where that bottle might come in handy, where you use the bottle that will just squirt things into each cavity. But I'm going to try and just put in a little bit in each mold. And what's going to happen is, if we have a little bit too much, we can use a scraper and get it off of there. So that when it comes out, you don't have a lot of work to do and you don't have to clean up a lot. Now this, it's going to go over a little bit, I think. But you can see it's filling up most of the mold. And like here, we've got a little bit that's going over the edges. Not great, not the way I want it, but that's what happens sometimes when you're doing things on camera and it doesn't come out exactly the way you plan. We'll just roll with it. It's still chocolate, it still tastes good. So this is doing two things when we bang on here. It's going to get the air bubbles out and it's going to fill up those spots. Because this chocolate, like I said, just doesn't move as much as the other one. Doesn't fill in as nicely. And then I'm going to show you what I do when that happens and we go over the edge. And I just use this scraper and I pull off any extra. Put it right in there, and you can see it's a lot cleaner now around the edges. So when it comes out, it's going to be nice and clean and we shouldn't have to do anything else with it. This is going to go in the freezer too. And these are ready already. So you can see it goes pretty quickly. And to unmold these, all you have to do is wrap this like that onto a hard surface. And I was mentioning that sometimes you get little bits of chocolate, but you can see for the most part, these are really cool and not a lot of work. The Seahorses are my favorite. And it's really simple. And people, like I said, think that you apparently sculpted them and did all the carving yourself. So those can go on a shell plate if you want to be really organized and go with the theme. And it's that simple. So I'm going to take a look. I don't think the other ones are going to be ready quite yet, so maybe we'll work on something else. But let me just go check those and see what we've got. Not quite ready. Some of them take a little longer than others because the thickness, like the turkeys were kind of thick, so that took a little bit longer. I think as long as we have chocolate out, we can do a few more things. So this mold is just some small, I don't know what you would call them. It's a variety of different little ones. Some I don't know, there's an acorn in there and some shells, but they're small and they're kind of neutral and they go with different things, so I use this one a lot. Now this chocolate will start to solidify a little bit, So around the edges, it's already gotten so that it's hard. And we can put that in the microwave and make it a little bit softer. But there's enough in here that we can do some and get started. So it's the same idea. You're just going to put a little bit in each one. And as I said before, you're just going to go a little bit below rather than too much, because it's easier that way. I like small things. When I bring these things to parties, people like to try different ones. So for the most part, I'll use small little molds. And sometimes if I use the larger molds, I'll mix different things in there. Like you can mix in Rice Krispie cereal. You can mix in little Score bar pieces or Heath bar, the toffee type thing. It just, that breaks it up a little so you don't have a big solid chocolate chunk, which I know sounds good, but sometimes it's not the best thing in the world if you don't want anybody hurting their teeth. So for the most part, I try to keep it like small little pieces of things. So I'm going to fill up a few more here, and you can see this is getting a little too much to be smooth, and it's been a little bit too long. I'm just going to put it in for another few, maybe 40 seconds. And when I do it a second time like that, I'll usually put it on a lower power. So I'll put it at half power. And I actually didn't do 40 seconds. I did 44 just because it was easier to do. So in the risk of full disclosure, that's what happened. So we got these out of that small little amount that was there. And we'll be able to fill up the rest of those with what's left. And then we'll get those in the fridge. And because it's already a little bit more solidified, these won't take as long in the fridge either. So you'll see it's liquidy again. And we're just going to fill up the rest of these. And you can see when it comes out of the microwave and it's very warm, it goes a lot faster and it can fill up a lot easier. It doesn't take an awful lot of chocolate. And like I said, most of this chocolate's around $3 a pound, but you can probably get 100 of these small things out of a pound of chocolate because they're pretty tiny. So this is all full. I'm just going to hit it a few more times. Get the air bubbles out. And you can see how nice and smooth it is at the top. Sometimes there's little bits like that from when I was going from mold to mold and from cavity to cavity. But for the most part, that's just going to flake off afterwards. It'll just give you a little bit of extra. And we'll see if anything else is ready, hopefully. Yep, these are the maple leaves. So don't look too great here. But on this side, you can see they look really neat. And they taste good too. On these, sometimes you'll hit it and they won't come out. If that happens, all you have to do is just maybe touch it and they'll pop out. So that's it. You can use these over and over again, thousands of times. They're pretty sturdy. I do have some that I've used a lot and they will start to break up a little bit in certain spots, but for the most part, they'll last for a long time. These just get washed with real quick with, you can use soap and water. I just rinse them pretty much with hot water. And you can use soap if you want, just make sure that you rinse them out good. But they're easy to clean up, easy to use. There's that. And then if we want to go with our themes again, just because I have plates for pretty much anything in the world, we have a leaf plate and you can put the leaf on there. It would look nice on this black one too for the contrast. But something like this, you'll see there might be little spots on here that you can just kind of flake off. It's just a little bit of extra chocolate. Sometimes that happens if it's a little bit of the mold has gone on, a little bit of the chocolate's gone outside your little lines for the mold. So that's it. You got your salted caramel maple leaves. And this cleans up pretty easy too. You can eat it or you can just toss it away. And then why don't we check on our turkeys. As I said, these were a little bit thicker, So they took a little bit longer, and we'll see if they're ready. For the most part, when you flip them out, you'll know. And you can tell too that your mold will get a little frosted. You can see that. And usually that means that you're in pretty good shape, that things are already solidified. So that's how simple that was. And we have a broken turkey, but we'll just ignore that. So that's the turkey. And they're kind of cool. I mean, you can put it like this. You can put a place card behind it if you wanted. Like I said, you could mix in different things so that it wasn't as solid a chunk of straight chocolate. But it's perfectly good. And this one that broke, you can just throw right back in here, melt it again, or you could eat it, but I won't do that on camera. Let's check on our last one. I don't have a turkey plate for those to go on to. We'll put them on a leaf. Obviously, you do whatever you like, but just makes it look nice if you've got a good presentation. So these just went in, I would say 2 minutes ago, and you can see these little bits that I have here like that. Like I said, those can all just get melted again. I didn't do it with the other one because it was salted caramel and milk chocolate, so that's why I threw those away. But for the most part, you can just use this again if it's the milk chocolate. So we're just gonna go like that, flip it over, wrap it a few times on here, a few stick, just hit them again. And I just love this because they're really nicely detailed. It's easy to do. People will be impressed. You'll get invited to parties. A little acorn here. You can see the little bits that got stuck on there. Just break them off. Now earlier I had mentioned about the air bubbles. I don't know if you can see that, but this one was a little bit solidified when I poured it into the mold, and it's not perfect. I mean, it's still edible, obviously, and it's not the end of the world if there's a few little air bubbles in there, but I don't know if you can see that there's just little air bubbles that didn't get tapped out of there just because I was kind of doing it in a hurry and wanted it to be right for you while I was on camera. So something like that you can eat, you can throw in here. But that I just wanted to let you know because that's what happens when you don't wrap on it enough. But you can see there's a lot of detail in these. You can do small ones, big ones. They have some that look like birthday cards. I have hundreds of molds, probably maybe more. No, not more than hundreds, but a lot of molds. So I've done them for, they have some that will say happy anniversary, thinking of you, thank you. So there's pretty much anything you would want to do with it. These I just put on plates to bring to a party, but some of the ones that are a little bit bigger, you could put into a little bag. They sell little cellophane bags, wrap it with a nice bow, and a lot of times people will give those out as gifts. I've done that for people that had worked on I think it was for a PTO kind of program, and they wanted to thank, I think, 75 people. So when they got to the dinner, there was just a little one on each person's plate that just said thank you in a nice bag. And a lot of times they can get used as favors. A lot of people like to do lollipops, and that's the same idea as these molds. It'll have maybe 3 on here. I have one with sunflowers. It's just got three big spots, and then there's a space in there that the lollipop stick can go, and you'd put that down and then put the chocolate over it. And people use those a lot for favors for birthday parties and weddings. I'm not a big fan of doing the lollipops, but it's something that is easy to do and is pretty much the same as what we just did here. Sometimes the lollipops are a little bit fussy and you have to make sure that the stick is coated all the way around so that it doesn't fall out. And then sometimes the chocolate gets on the stick and doesn't come out. So that's just me, and I don't really like to do the lollipops that much. But for the most part, they're pretty simple too. And that leads me to something else. If you guys want to see me making lollipops, I'll do it. I can't say yes to everything you might have in mind, but the lollipops or something like that, ask and we can do that. You can get in touch with Lake Cam by contacting them at studio@lakecam.tv, and you can just let them know if you have any questions, if you have anything that you'd like me to work on. I'll consider it. So we did molded chocolates today, and it was pretty simple. It's easy to do, it's quick to do. You can do a variety of things because the amount of molds is endless, and the amount of different kinds of chocolate you can use is pretty extensive too. So we did some simple milk chocolate that we did turkeys and just some small little figures, and there were some fall ones in there and some flowers in there too. That was simple. We did the salted caramel maple leaves, which would be nice if there was a maple flavoring on the chocolate, and we can do that too, but this was just simple to do and was in a really easy mold that goes really fast because it's not too thick. And then the other thing that we did was these small little seashells, seahorses, sea life. And usually when I bring these to parties, I like to put them on a plate. That's a seashell, of course. But I also sometimes just put down a little layer of brown sugar. And so it looks like sand. And then you can just put your sea life right on there. And you've got a nice display. It especially looks good when you've done white chocolate, milk, and dark, because you've got the variety against that brown sugar. So it looks really nice. It's simple to do, and I hope that you try it. Thanks for joining us on Small Things Greatly, and I hope you appreciate the small things.